We all know it's everybody's favorite. We have 6 bills today, and we have 30 minutes to get them done, and I hope we can get them done just as quick. The first bill that I'm going to call up and discuss is House Bill number 630. This bill will allow cities that have less than 2,000 people in them per the last census to have poll managers work the polls that may not work at that city. They have to be qualified electors in the county, but this is to help our smaller cities out. That's what the bill does. Any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will report that bill out. House Bill number 858 is next on the agenda. This bill requires that any OMR voting equipment that has wireless capability, wireless connections available, that must be turned off during the elections. I think there's really only one county that may have this equipment. I think the county purchased the equipment before we had a rule in that they not allowed to connect to the internet. This just states that they cannot have that capability to connect to the internet on election day. That's what that bill does. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Chazanal. Yes, because it's my understanding that if you can connect to the internet, there's a concern about whether the results can be tampered with, whether the machine can be tampered with. So if you don't have internet connection, then you avoid that possibility. That was a very good explanation of the question, right? It says, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Say no. The ayes have it. House Bill number 858 will be reported out. House Bill number 859 is the House version are similar to our version of the bill where we are passed to eliminate the in-person absentee ballot envelopes. This bill is frankly simpler than our bill was. It doesn't change the number of days required for the in-person absentee voting. That remains at 45. There are no new excuses added. This quite simply states that if you show up to vote in-person absentee, you cast a ballot and you put that ballot into the OMR election equipment. You still have to sign an affidavit stating that you have an excuse. If you have the excuse, that's how you cast the ballot. You no longer have to put it in an envelope under this bill. Are there any questions on the bill? All right, it was a good explanation, I guess. So do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. All right, House Bill number 859 will be reported out. The ayes have it. Let me announce the results of the vote. House Bill number 907. This is I'm going to call it a housekeeping bill. We passed a law last year that moved the runoff elections from 3 weeks to 4 weeks. That ran into some issues. If there is a primary with a 4-week runoff period, the time frame that we require for ballots to be available, for sample ballots to be available, that time frame was kind of squished to where under the right circumstances, those ballots may not be available within 60 days. This just states that it must be available as soon as practicable in those instances that happens. So like I said, it's housekeeping measure to make sure the Secretary of State's office is able to get those ballots out as soon as possible, as soon as practicable. It was requested by the Secretary of State's office. That's an explanation of the bill. Do I have any questions? That's correct. It's sample ballots, yes. Senator Bryan, you're recognized for a question?
Did I understand the chair to say that if everything goes right, the ballots won't be available?
The chair may have said that. The chair...
the chair phrased that a bit more delicately.
Right. So in the right circumstances, this would allow the Secretary of State's office to have sample ballots when they otherwise, by the time frame, cannot get those out within 60 days, as we already require. This will allow them the time to get that done as soon as practicable. Was that a better explanation?
Well, no, there was that word right, in the right circumstance.
Okay. I guess in the left circumstances, we could make sure they do it as well. In the correct circumstances.
What about in certain circumstances?
In certain circumstances. I like that. That's a good word. Thank you for, that amendment to my statement will be accepted
Now we
without
can-
objection.
Now we can discuss the determination of Easter.
That's right. Thank you, Senator Bryan. Any questions on that bill as explained? No? Okay, do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient to pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Okay, thank you. House Bill number 907, the ayes have it, and House Bill number 907 will be reported out. House Bill number 908, this is, as many of you may know, there's a Supreme Court case right now that has been brought forward, United States Supreme Court case that deals with the law that we have in place currently that I believe was put in place during the COVID year that allows mail-in absentee ballots to be accepted if they are received within 5 business days after an election. That is up for review by the Supreme Court. In the instance that they strike that law and say that ballots must be received by election day, this bill has trigger language in it that would move that, that would require those ballots to be received the day before election day, and that would apply from federal through all statewide elections. So it's just would codify what the Supreme Court would say. Again, there's triggering language that if the Supreme Court does that, that goes into effect. Are there any questions on that bill? Senator Fillingham, recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is that really necessary? I mean, if the U.S. Supreme Court says it, they kind of preempt our laws anyway, don't they?
They do. It's my understanding that the case that's before the Supreme Court only deals with federal elections. And so this is just to make sure that we're using the same standard throughout federal and statewide elections. And I will look for a nod maybe from the Secretary of State's office. Okay, I've said that's correct. Thank you for your question. That's a lot of nods. Any other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. House Bill number 908 will be reported out. Final bill on the agenda today is House Bill number 1241. This is a bill that will require the Secretary of State to develop a centralized voting report system. So your elections commissioners or a delegate, a designee of the election commissioner will send in results up to within 1 hour after election, and then continue to send in official updated results every 30 minutes thereafter. And the Secretary of State's office will have and maintain a website that will have that available. Talking with the chairman of the House, that is the author of this bill, his reasoning is that right now we're relying on media reports. A lot of those times you're not getting official reports. This will be a more official system, and it's my understanding from talking with the chairman of the House committee that there is federal money available for this, so it would not cost Mississippi anything. There is a reverse repealer in this bill, and there were some code sections brought forward. I'm going to recommend that we make an amendment to that reverse repealer to change June 30th to June 29th, because I would like to still keep the reverse repealer in it and get this to conference. But that would make that change, and I guess make us be the owners of this reverse repealer. Are there any questions?
I so move.
Oh, so that we have the amendment has been moved. Are there any questions on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of that amendment, say aye. Any opposed, no. Okay, that amendment is in place. Any questions now on the bill? Senator Blunt, for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question would be for you is, what are you thinking about with these other code sections that aren't related to the election night reporting system?
I noticed those when I was looking through the bill just before this meeting. When I met with the chairman in the House, my explanation of the bill is what we talked about. I'm not sure if he brought those forward for a certain reason, but this will give me a chance to talk with him about that. It'll make sure that we don't have a bill that we're passing with code sections open, and we'll go to conference on it, and I can find out, and I'll be able to report that back.
So could we just take them out and just do the election night reporting? And
if that's the will of the committee, I don't have any objection to that.
And then my other, let me cogitate on that for just a minute, but I would like to hear just briefly from the Secretary of State's office about how this is going to work. I mean, I know that for as long as I can remember, the Associated Press essentially did this, and they're not really, there's not much left of the Associated Press anymore. So I don't want to, I know we've got a 1:30, but if you could just briefly tell us, how you imagine this working, because if you're given this responsibility.
Senator Blunt, and Mr. Kirkpatrick, if you don't mind stepping up to the table and turning on that microphone, and if you can, if you're able to answer that question, I'm going to recognize you to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have seen in some instances where there are not like Associated Press out at counties where there have been missing reports and that have caused issues on elections night. Most recently, the most recent issue I can think of is back in 23. I think Lincoln County had an issue where they sent all their results to media and it wasn't reported. And there was a lot of calls into our office and the Lincoln County Circuit Clerk's office the next morning, raising all kinds of concerns, even though they had sent those media reports. We have talked to several vendors already on this, even prior to this bill being presented forward. There are several vendors who do this very well in other states who have election night reporting. About half the states have election night reporting systems. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, we've actually already secured federal money for an E&R system to make sure that would be more than enough to cover. And so it would be one of these vendors who already have these systems successfully set up in other states. And they would essentially have a portal in which they would be able to directly upload those results from their vote tabulating systems directly into that system, and it would be immediately available to the public to view at that time. That is my understanding of the language of the bill.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. And to answer your question, it is in the bill that it would be the election commissioner, chairman, or their designee that would be making the reports during that time frame. I believe Senator Tate had a question.
I have a question unless Senator Blunt's going to make an amendment. So what are these other code sections? Just to slow down for a second, just go over what code sections are we bringing forward? I mean, there's a reason.
Yes, I imagine. Yeah, the sections are in the title. You got section 2, you'll see is brought forward. It addresses, looks to deal with county executive committee meetings, and then there's another section that deals with municipal. So my assumption is that maybe if there were changes that need to be made to make sure that these apply to elections other than statewide elections, that those codes were maybe brought forward. But again, I'm happy to entertain an amendment if we don't want to simply bring those forward and just have section 1 be the substance of the bill. I'm happy to entertain an amendment from the committee if the committee would like to do that.
I feel like there's a reason. I don't want to be in the way of that reason. I just want to know what the reason is.
So to let you know, as chairman, our options would be, if we laid this on the table, we would maybe have to meet again. Okay, and if
They're in here for a reason. I'm just curious what the reason is, and I wanted to listen to what everybody had to say.
Yes.
Just go in here and read it, but I mean, it looks harmless to me, but there's a reason. I just want to know what it is.
I will certainly find that out, and before I bring this bill up on the floor, I will get with you and with any other committee members. One good thing about this not being a very large committee, I can meet with each one of you and let you know what that is, and then I'll also offer that on the floor for the general body to understand as well.
And I would like if we don't have a reason to remove them on the floor.
Yes. Okay. I would agree. Any other questions, Senator Tate?
Not sufficient to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I do have one other question for Senator Bryan, I believe, recognized for a question.
I had questions about the election night reporting.
Yes.
I would start by recommending to everyone to read the preface to Making of the President 1960 by Theodore H. White. It's not that long. It's a description of election night in November of 1960. And when you read it, it will absolutely break your heart. But in there is a description of the votes coming in on election night. And in 1960, Mr. White says that there's a point in the night where the elections are coming in, election returns are coming in, where nobody knows anything. It's not possible because there's so many elections going on in so many places. No newspaper, no political operation, nobody could organize to get all that information up. And among other things, he says, only the great wire services could do this. And since that time, until recently, we relied on the wire services, and it was AP and UPI, and I think finally they worked together on this. But you had a very good system which got all the unofficial results as quickly as they could be obtained. And of course, it depends on how slow the voting is going on and everything. But they were unofficial results, but they were very useful because you could look at those, and if you could get to where you can find out what votes are out, see what's going on, overwhelmingly to figure out who's going to win all the elections, and see which ones are really close where, you know, the official results are going to perhaps differ. And I think that I don't know that Decision Desk HQ may be doing that, and they may be doing that more so than the AP. But that's different from the official returns. And I'm concerned about reporting unofficial returns on the Secretary of State's website. I don't object to doing it. I'm just concerned as squirrely as things have gotten about all this, that it be clear that what's coming in are unofficial returns, they're partial returns, they're coming in from the officials to show you where the vote is at that point, I suppose. But for example, you're now going to have situations where I think you get all the absentee ballots counted first, which don't necessarily correspond with the election day ballots, which is okay. That's not a big deal, except that means that the initial results are not indicative of the final results. And you have the notion that somebody somewhere is out scrounging around to find votes and on and on and on and on. I've heard tell of people calling up election officials, if you can imagine such a thing, and say, can you just get me 16,000 extra votes here? Nothing that's going on is nefarious. It's just the mechanics of counting votes. So I've got two related questions. One is, if this is going to be on the Secretary of State's website, it won't solve the problem. But I certainly think there needs to be some explanation that these are unofficial returns. They're coming in to give everybody an indication of what's happening, but particular, given the vagaries of counting, and if absentee ballots come in early, they won't necessarily be similar to what comes in later. That just in the ordinary course of things, different counties for different reasons take longer or shorter periods to count their ballots. I know that the practice in Monroe County is that the election commissioners go down to the courthouse on election night. And when all the ballots have been counted, they've got a stack of the iffy ballots over here, and they decide on those ballots on election night and certify the returns that night, I think. I'm not sure that's the practice everywhere. And I'm in support of what we're trying to do by have these election results reported. I just want to make sure that if we do this, that however you do it on the website or whatever, that it's carefully explained what's coming in and why the results might change as the votes come in over the night. That's somebody more clever than I needs to figure out how to do that and how to word that. The other question I have is Decision Desk HQ doing this? Because you go back 20 years ago, there's nothing the Secretary of State's website could do that would be any better than just, reporting the results from AP. And if Decision Desk HQ is doing this, and I think they are, I'm not sure. I think that's the default place that people go to. But I would hope that somebody would look and see where is it that is now the Associated Press of this century, and where do you go to get the election night results, and see what we're going to add by not just looping into that. Those are my concerns.
Thank you, Senator Bryan. I can say that with our reverse repealer now repealing this bill one day earlier than the House intended, we have that in there, and I will certainly meet with the Secretary of State's office and we will take that, because I think those are very valid concerns. I definitely think that we need these reported in a way that it's known as being unofficial. And so I thank you for your questions, and will do my best to get those addressed and answered. Senator Filligan for a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, and maybe for the Secretary of State, but if you're familiar with how the other states that are using these outside vendors when they're reporting, similar to what Senator Bryan was asking, do they also report like the percentages showing, or these are the results so far, but that's 30% or 60%, or like the New York Times does a very good job on their website. It'll also show you sort of an indication of where the uncollected votes yet remaining to be turned in come from in a particular state or region. Do you know these other vendors, do they have that capacity, and is that part of what is shared online, or is it just the raw vote count?
Thank you. Great question. That is something we have looked at. There are vendors that do both, some just kind of very high level, others that get into the more granular. What we have really looked for at the vendors is that more detailed, because we are very concerned, as Senator Bryan mentioned, about this being taken and, used as in a way that is not showing what it's showing. So we've looked at making sure that we have text on the website to make sure that it can explain these are unofficial results. Here's how they're being reported, as well as these are the precincts that are out. Here are the precincts that are reported. Here are outstanding. That way it's not just raw numbers that anybody you don't know if it's 50% or you don't know if it's 100%. There are 7 out of 10 precincts reporting, there are 3 more, and here are the votes from the 7 out of 10. And you can even look at, here are the vote results from that particular precinct. Some can even get broken down to absentee versus in person. Those are all configurations that we can work with the vendor on and work with the counties on how much wants to be shown in the RFP process, and asking for what the vendors are capable of.
So in those discussions, you are inclined to go with the vendor that provides the more granular detail, is what I'm hearing?
Yes, to show that there's 10 precincts in the county and 7 out of 10 are reporting. Don't particularly think just flat numbers that without context is helpful to anybody. These are only helpful within the context of Mississippi's election law. So we want to make sure that everybody is fully aware of what's being reported and how. Otherwise, it leads to misinformation and confusion in the process, which is not helpful to anybody.
The percentages, because if it's like 3 out of 10, if the 3 that are reporting represent 90% of the vote total, and then the outlying more rural precincts may be more numerous, but they may represent a much smaller share of the vote, that also would be important, I think.
Yes, most of what we looked at will jointly show percentages and also the percentage of voter turnout simultaneously. So if it's 500 votes cast out of precinct 1, it'll also show you that's 2% of the total vote count of the county, as well as the voter turnout in that precinct as well. So it will provide a lot of that context of what you're looking at, and not just raw numbers that leave it up to the viewer to interpret.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I'm glad to learn that I'm not the only person sitting up late at night looking at the election returns on the New York Times website. But since Senator Fillingane has mentioned that, they are wherever they download them from, and I think Decision Desk HQ also does this. Whoever is doing this makes some assumption of where the votes are out, and they say X number of votes are out, which is very fine for a reporting organization to do. But it's just different if the state officially says there are 10,000 votes out. That's different than some election experts saying it sure looks to us like there are 10,000 out. Anything that goes through the Secretary of State's office has an air of officialdom about it that I worry about. And the other thing that I'll mention that Senator Fillingane brought to mind is I've noticed that a lot of the web, or at least some of the websites, now only report greater than 95%, that they'll never report 100% in, that when all the votes are in, they just simply show greater than 95%. I assume because they're affidavit ballots, challenge ballots, and all that are still out, and they want to be careful not to imply a degree of certainty that's not there. And I hate to go on and on about this, but I feel better knowing that Senator Fillingane has also been going down this rabbit hole. There are just things like this that get reported on election night, which are not a big deal, but in the atmosphere we're living, the most innocuous things get to be blown out of proportion. So I just don't want to make a mistake by trying to be more transparent and more accurate in everything. We inadvertently get in a world where we're creating more problems. And I'm sorry I talked so long.
No problem at all, Senator Bryan. I've enjoyed the conversation. I think that these are all very good, valid points, and we can address these and talk about them more as we bring this bill through the process. And should the bill pass in some form, at the end of the day, I think we've got some good points that need to be addressed in it. But with that, if there are no other questions, the motion that I would that would be made now is title sufficient to pass as amended. Is there a motion? Okay, that you've heard the motion. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. That bill will be reported out. That is the end of our agenda and the end of this great meeting. Thank you all for your help and for coming to the meeting at 1 o'clock. Yes, I would like to, the motion is rise and report. All in favor, aye. Any opposed, no. We're adjourned.